Test 1, 2.
Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Planning Committee. I am Councillor Michael Lilly, Chair of the Planning Committee, and I'll be chairing this meeting this evening. To begin the meeting, there are a few matters of housekeeping. Action in the event of an emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening, so if an alarm sounds, please evacuate the Town Hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street and then to the car park behind the Town Hall on St Ronwell Street. This meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube page and will be available after the meeting. Please would speakers use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone, and would participants please mute microphones when not speaking. Introductions, and now I'll ask members of the committee to introduce themselves, starting with my left please.
Good evening, Councillor Lynn Barton, Shrub End Ward.
Councillor Mike Hogg, St Anne's and St John's Wards.
Martin Warnes, Beerchurch Ward.
Roger Mannion, Tiptree Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Paul Dundas, Tiptree Ward, and I'm substituting for Councillor Lee Tate.
Councillor Robert Davidson, Mersey and Pyfleet Ward.
Daniel Cooper, Planning Officer.
James Ryan, Planning Manager.
And Simon Cairns, Joint Head of Planning.
And Robert Carmichael, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you everyone, and we have had apologies from Councillor Jacqueline McLean, and she's unwell the last minute, so it's too last minute to arrange a sub, so we wish her well. I hope she gets better at home. We're also 2 members short, and I have to put on record that we've received no apologies for those 2 councillors, Councillor Sam McLean and Councillor Sam McCarthy. I'll be writing to the group leaders to ask why they haven't turned up or sent apologies, because it's not the first time. Thank you. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly. Set them to silent and do not use voice or camera flash functions. We will have a break after the completion at 7:30 p.m. or at an appropriate time. There are toilets on every floor in the building and an induction loop in this room. Whilst determination of a planning application is not a quasi-judicial process, unlike certain licensing functions carried out by the local authority, it is a formal administrative process involving the application of national and local policies. Reference to legislation and case law, as well as rules of procedure rights of appeal, and an expectation that people will act reasonably and fairly. All involved in these decisions should remember that the possibility that an aggrieved party may seek a judicial review and or complain to the Ombudsman on grounds of maladministration or a breach of the authorities' code. Substitutes, we've already heard substitutes, Councillor Dundas, Councillor Tate, and apologies for Councillor Jacqueline McLean. Declarations of interest, and slight change in what was announced. So councillors must publicly announce the item number, whether the interest is disclosable pecuniary or any other registrable or non-registrable interest, please. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Chairman. 7.3, I'm the landowner, so I'll be leaving the meeting.
Thank you. And you must declare.
Prejudicial interest, sorry.
Actually, it's a disclosable pecuniary interest. It's changed according to Andrew Weaver.
I have a disclosable pecuniary interest as well. Thank you.
I will be asking Andrew to send round a note to all the councillors so we get it right in the future. Thank you. Item 4, urgent items. There are no urgent items. Item 5, have your say. There are no have your say speakers. So on the applications tonight, we do have on 7.1 and 7.2, we do have Jane Thompson, who is the applicant, or speaking on behalf of the applicant, which is Colchester City Council, I was going to say Borough Council. And then we have 7.3, which is, we have no speakers for or against. So now we will go on to the applications. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight. 7.1, route to the University of Essex, St Botolph Circus, Colchester. 7.2, the King's Arms, Broad Green, Coggeshall, Colchester. And then 7.3, the Little Doves Day Nursery, Lower Road, Peldon, in Colchester. Committee members.
Sorry, Chair, just to correct, there is a typo on there that it should be the second 7.2 has been misprinted on that sheet in front of you because it is. Yes, that was the last committee's one that I. 231. Oh, there we are. So it's 231826, and that's route to the University of Essex, Greenstead Boundary Road. And apologies.
I thought that was strange because the Colchester one, that was okay, right. So we are clear then. So we can take, because of the interest in 7.3, we will now, committee members, we could take 7.1 and 7.2 en bloc if we wish to do so, unless somebody wants to call those applications out. No, have I got a proposer to take those en bloc? Councillor Warnes, seconded by Councillor Mannion. So all those in favour of taking 7.1 and 7.2 en bloc, please raise your hands.
That is unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Now we move on to 7.3, so I ask Councillor Davison to remove himself from the meeting hall, please. Thank you. So 7.3, there are no speakers for or against. So we could take this one en bloc as well, if any members wish to call this application out. Councillor Dundas.
Yeah, I think the only comment I'd make on it is that I'm aware we received an amendment to representations this afternoon by email. personally, I'm quite happy with the EV charging points as they are. I don't really think we should alter those. I think demand for EVs is going to go up and people are going to want to charge them. But I mean,
Well, I think, so the question is, do you wish to call it out?
Sorry.
You're already discussing
yes,
it, so.
yes. The answer is yes, I do, Chair.
Sorry, be.
My apologies. No, I'll take your point.
Okay, so that's been called out, so 7.3 we shall now hear. So it'll be over to James Ryan to present the application, please, James. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks very much, members. I'll just share my screen. You're chair, sorry. And members, I'll just share my screen. So I'll whiz through this, and I'm sure any of the discussion can be drawn out in the questions. But this is item 7.3, Little Doves Day Nursery, Lower Road, Peldon. Green arrow pointing to the broad location of the site in Peldon, Sabberton Reservoir, the large water body to the north. This is what the building looks like. So relatively simple in form, 6.5 meters deep, 4.6 or so meters to the ridge. Slightly higher at the other end because it tapers. The ridge stays the same and it falls down a hill slightly. Relatively simple kind of agricultural vernacular. Replacement building is the building on the, do you see my cursor there? It's this one here. The existing nursery is this L-shaped building here. And the car parking, as you'll see, is effectively informally laid out, as you'll see in a second, but exists in the centre. And this is just a slightly big, wider scale picture showing the drawing, even showing a little bit of the rest of Peldon, the Grade 2 star listed building next door, Games Farm House, and the site. So this is with my back to Games Farm's house, looking at the existing nursery. As you see, ample parking on site. It's looking towards Mersey, the Mersey direction. That's looking up the Bellmouth to the Peldon Road. A little bit closer in, the existing nursery building. That's looking across the site, and you can see the ridge of the listed building across the site. Slightly broader. There's another one. It's Harris fenced off because the existing agricultural building has been demolished for the implementation of the previously approved scheme. And that's looking straight down the site effectively. Maybe we'll just go back to... So as noted in the committee report, permission has previously been granted for an office building in this location of the same footprint size, very similar in design terms, except where with some high level windows on the rear. On the current proposal, the approved scheme had roof lights instead. Apart from that, relatively similar. In this instance, instead of an office, a separate planning unit being created, an office building, this will be an extension to the existing day nursery on site. So you've got staff room, sleeping room, and 3 classrooms with changing rooms and toilets, for example. So that will is beneficial in many respects because it will prevent any conflict between the 2 uses as they are effectively will be integrated. Just like to point out the comments on the amended update sheet that came through where the applicant has made a couple of or 3 submissions with regards to EV charging, the materiality of the walls and the landscaping. Officers' response is set out in that update sheet, but in short, it is considered that because of the proximity to a Grade 2 star listed building, the walls should be clad in black stained timber feather edged boarding as opposed to black concrete planks, which are currently being suggested. And it's felt that this, whilst the existing nursery building is clad in that material, this is significantly nearer a important heritage asset and therefore has more of an impact on its setting. And therefore we really would promote the use of timber feather edge boarding here. 3 EV charging points is proposed, or as Environmental Protection have asked for 1 per 10 spaces, so that would equate to 3. We think that's a reasonable provision for a use of this nature. And in terms of landscaping, we consider there is sufficient space on site. We've imposed, or we're suggesting the imposition of the simple landscaping scheme, so it doesn't need to be anything particularly onerous, but we'd like to see a little bit of landscaping, particularly to the rear, to hopefully soften the manner in which the building sits in the landscape and in juxtaposition to the listed building next door. So I think I'll leave it there. Any questions? Be much obliged.
Thank you. Any questions? Paul, over to you.
My timing will hope to be better this time. Sorry for
No, that's fine.
Chair. Yeah, I think my only comments are really, reading the representations are on the materials. I get why we might be looking for the wood, although I understand it looks visually pretty much identical. I'm not an expert on boarding materials, but oh, okay, there's some there. Yeah, but I guess the question is, I'm just worried that although I understand that this building is fractionally, is a bit nearer.
Just a second, please.
Sorry, Councillor Dunners, I wouldn't usually interrupt unless. Could I just query, where does that come from? Because we don't usually give out materials during the meeting or allow them to be passed around. Could I just query where that's come from?
That has come from council.
That's come from the applicant.
Yeah, to show that is that the material he's used before, or
the original building.
I'm sorry, Chair. I'm quite concerned that the applicant has passed something round to the committee, which we would not allow any other applicant to do so. I think that if that could please be passed to officers for assessment and comment, then that's probably the best way to go forwards on this, so that they can give a comment as well as them doing so.
I think that's fair enough as well.
That appears to be a black hardy plank product, which is a composite concrete boarding, effectively.
And is that the one you propose to put on, or is it the original one?
No, what is proposed and has been requested by the Historic Buildings and Areas Officer is a feather-edged timber boarding. So instead of being entirely flat like that, it's thicker at one end than the other, and it is made of timber. So eventually that will weather down and become much softer, whereas this type of product does stay quite shiny for a very long time. I mean, it's extremely durable. It can actually be painted, but very rarely needs to be. And it's just not as convincing because it's not actually timber. It's timber with a embossed grain, effectively.
Okay, right, fair enough. Then I think you keep it over there, and we'll carry on. Paul, sorry for the drama.
Okay, it didn't reach me, so I can sort of. I'm the only one who hasn't seen it. Yeah, it's just my only concern is whether we've got having a little bit of lack of consistency here, because in terms of the overall site and the materials, the ship seems to have sailed a little bit. 7 or 8 years ago this building was built. So my question is, why didn't we specify it then? And having really already okayed the concrete material, if that's what it's called, in close proximity on this site for consistency, we're looking a bit strange now saying on another building you want a different material, which is also going to look slightly different to the current building there. So is that going to look slightly strange that you've got an integrated site, which is all one nursery, and you've got two buildings which look slightly different? I wonder if they might look a bit better if they look the same. I'm thinking with hindsight, it'd be better if we'd had the feather boarding on the original building, but we haven't, and we can't turn the clock back. So I just wonder if perhaps we have to show a bit of consistency. That's my only comment, really.
Simon?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think, as James has alluded to, the setting of the Great Star listed medieval games farmhouse, which this immediately adjoins the curtilage of, and indeed probably was the original farmstead group, is quite different between the day nursery building, which is significantly subject to greater visual separation, and had an intervening built form originally. So this building is seen very much in the context of the immediate context of the listed farmhouse, whose setting we have a statutory duty to preserve or enhance. Whereas in terms of the other building, it was separated by an intervening distance and an intervening building. So it would not be seen in the same visual envelope in relation to the farmhouse. And that is the reasoning, I imagine, behind the original decision to allow what is a uniform artificial material. If I can just say, it's very similar to the difference between a wood grain PVC effect window and a timber window. One attempts to mimic the other, but doesn't do so particularly successfully, in my opinion. But that's no criticism of the product. I'm sure it's excellent in its appropriate context.
James.
Just to add, it's an interesting point. Condition 4 of the 17 permission, which granted permission for the nursery, had the following condition: notwithstanding the details of the submitted drawings and application form, the material shall be black weatherboarding, red black plinth and clay panel roof. So it wasn't wholly specific as to what it was. It didn't say that hardy plank for a composite is acceptable. It just used the words black weatherboarding. So I suppose this probably complies, but I don't think that was necessarily the intention, but it's not a very precisely worded condition. And I think that might be how that has happened effectively. But it does note the supporting statement, so we're going to have a quick check of what was actually noted at the time, because we have the file here.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Warnes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with the black wooden weatherboarding. I think it's because of the proximity. It's much closer than what the actual nursery building is. And when you consider the age of the Games Farm house, then the black wooden boarding would have been the natural material of the time. And we're trying to preserve the outlook of this heritage asset, then I don't think it's unreasonable to want the black weatherboarding of something which is 27 metres apart, where the other is probably 40, 50, 60 metres apart. Thank you.
Yes, and if I remember Peldon well, there's quite a few buildings out there that are still original, the black timber wood buildings over there. Peldon Rose, I believe, is a similar sort of building as well. A lot of barns down there. So, any other questions? There was a question about the electric points. We have 3 proposed. Seems quite a lot in such a small area, and really we only have 10 staff. But it's quite good that we're pushing that forward. But are they in the form of just an electric plug, or are they proper electric points?
The condition that Environmental Protection have requested is that 1 electric vehicle charging point will be provided per 10 parking spaces, so that works out as roughly 3 in total. They haven't specified what type of charger they want. We tend to allow, in the interest of simplicity, we tend to allow the applicant to be the judge of what type of facility they want to provide. 3, I think, is a reasonable amount, because that may allow 1 or 2 staff to charge, and then 1 as a destination charger. So if you get an Ofsted inspector, for example, thinking off the top of my head, they may wish to charge if they've come for a long journey and then have a long journey to return. I don't think there's any intention that these will be rapid or ultra rapid chargers that are going to require infrastructure and substations, that kind of thing. And we would hope that they are more than a 3-pin, but ultimately that would comply as long as they were externally mounted and available. But it's to future-proof the building, because this will potentially stand for a long time, and the EVs are gaining popularity regardless of the legal need for them. So they're clearly going to be the way forward, be they be banned from 2030 or 2035. So it's worth having them in and consider.
That's great. Thank you very much. So I would imagine that the applicant would ask all the users who come out of electric points, if they all use one type, then that type will be installed, and it's up to them. So thank you for that. Any other questions for this application? So as no more questions, have we got a proposal for the application? Councillor Warnes has proposed them.
I propose acceptance of the officer's recommendation in the form laid out in the papers.
Thank you. Have I got a seconder for that? Councillor Hogg as well. So we've got a proposal and a seconder for the application. All those in favour of the application, please raise your hands.
5.
Those against? One against. Thank you. So the application is passed. I never read the thing about that. No. So before we go, I just got to read a little legal bit when we put things on block. And this covers it. I can confirm that those items have been determined in line with the officer recommendation in the report and amendment sheet, and there will be no further discussion on those items. Any interested parties in attendance for those items may wish to leave now. Sorry I didn't do it earlier. That was for 7.1 and for 7.2. Thanks very much for turning up. That concludes the business for this evening. Good evening.